I think it was, yeah, it's already recording, by the way.
That's the AI
Oh,
recording.
got it.
This is the video recording. Okay, so welcome everybody to the second to the last class. Well, actually, there's 2 more classes next week, but this is our second to the last guest lecture, and I wanted to give Chrissy a chance to share what she does with all of you. And Chrissy, you know, we've had the Thursdays have been my guest lectures, and they are professionals that are in the field using the technology from everything from PR, marketing, even some like maybe some of the tech development side. I had, you know, Stacy Aldrich on. I also had Brandon Makaava from Nation of Hawaii talking about how he uses it. So a lot of it has been about people that are in the profession and using the tools to advance whatever the mission is, right? So you're the only one that I got to do kind of a telehealth focus. So let me preface that with saying that Chrissy, I've known Chrissy for a good number of years now, and she's over at the Waianae Post Comprehensive Health Center, and I think she's really very energetic, very much a go-getter, and she can pretty much talk nonstop through the entire entire presentation. So, but if you students have any kind of questions, start to formulate them or put them in the chat, and then you know we can address those. But with that, I want to give it over to Chrissy, and Chrissy, you can give a more detailed description, introduction about what you do over at the Comprehensive Health Center over there in Waianae.
Well, awesome, Bert. Mahalo again for inviting me. Aloha kako, everyone. Thank you all for your time and your interest, I hope, in what's happening over on the healthcare side when it comes to how technology is really transforming the way that we communicate. And that not only involves patient-provider communication, but really how patients communicate with everyone in their healthcare team. And that can even include, imagine when you go to get your labs done and you're waiting for your lab results. You'd long ago, and we'll talk about this, where you'd have to wait for your provider team to get back to you. Now with the advent of patient portals, not only with your provider, but with your laboratory, you can log into the laboratory portal, and most oftentimes, because of certain laws and policies that have put in place, you can actually get your results sometimes before your provider even gets them. So, when you talk about how information is being communicated now, it's really very different from when I first started in this industry, which is 35 years ago. And so what I'm going to do at this point is, because it's a lot of what I do and where I work are in the slides, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I will say, though, I really like to have, I don't mind interaction. If there's something that's really compelling that you want to ask a question or you want clarification, please feel free to interrupt. I would love to have that kind of discussion. I'm going to preface this by saying what Bert said is very true. I have no problem talking because I get so excited about not only healthcare, but how we can help our patients. I'm not in direct patient care anymore, but everything that we do in healthcare, at the end of the day, it's all to serve our patients and our community, and that always gets me super excited. And so with that, Bert, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Yep.
I'm going to try to place some of there are 2 video links within some of the slides. So I'm going to try to do that. If not, I did put some screenshots just in case. So let's see. And okay, great. So you should see my first slide.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So what we're going to focus on today is, one, as Bert was saying, I'm Chrissy Kuahine. You may see some areas where it says Michelle, Chrissy Kuahine. My given name is Michelle. I go by Chrissy, but I answer to either. So, and my title, Director of Tech Equity, that's a new one. And I'm actually going to talk about that because whenever I introduce myself and what I do at the health center, most people will start off by saying, what is that? It's not a conventional title. It's actually something that came up here, and that really was born out of, I think, our experience, especially as, COVID highlighted our need for telehealth and our need or our realization that not everyone is connected and that not everyone can get connected easily. But so today our focus will be on telehealth as well as AI innovations. And with really all of my presentations in the past, I'm going to say at least 2.5, 3 years, I always insert a digital inclusion. We'll talk about what the definition of that is because, as great as technology is, whether it's technology in healthcare or, as Bert mentioned, in marketing or social media, I mean, all that is dependent on access. And so, if you're a socioeconomic disadvantaged community, the likelihood of you having the same high speed, affordable internet access that then provide the same opportunities that others do with unlimited cell plans or overlapping Wi-Fi access in their home, those same opportunities won't be available. So again, mahalo for having me today, and feel free to go ahead and interrupt me if there's anything that you like to talk about. So I've been with the health center now for 35 years. I did start as a medical receptionist, medical assistant. So as you'll see in a couple of more slides ahead of, coming up, you'll see the transformation between paper and how communication has changed. But yes, I do come from the world where let's see, in high school, there was no internet. So I came from a world before there was the internet. At my job, we used a lot of, when I first started DOS, and we had paper medical records, we had a lot of Post-its, we had paper scheduling. Now, my title, Director of Tech Equity, again, which is a new role, is really focusing on making sure that our patients, my community, all have access to the same tools, especially when it comes to telehealth. And again, this came out of COVID, where we found that not all of our patients could connect with their provider, whether that was their primary care provider, a specialist, or even urgent care, because they just didn't either have the means to connect or they didn't have the confidence or know-how. And so that's where the digital literacy comes in. So as you've seen all the bullets, these are the areas that in terms of my role now, this is really where my focus is. And I'm coming from 20 years, the last 20 years of being on the health information technology side. So my primary role that I'm leaving and moving into tech equity was managing our electronic health record department. And so what that encompassed, exactly what it is, our electronic health record, we use NextGen, we're migrating to Epic. I don't know if anyone knows anything about EHRs, but it is an Epic world. So all of our hospitals, most providers, probably not individual providers, but community health centers are moving in that direction. Along those lines with EHR, we interfaces, we integrated with different radiology. We have an ER here at our health center. And so all of our satellites and ERs and primary care clinics are all connected via EHR. So as a patient, you can go to any of our sites, walk into our ER, and have all your information available for your provider to be able to access. So my other areas of focus now will be definitely collaboration. So when we talk about technology and communities, you'll see in the picture on the right-hand side, that's in our local newspaper. That came from a summit that we had around different priority needs. So it's a mini community needs assessment. But one of the priorities that has risen is digital equity in our community. And so really focusing again on connectivity, on how that impacts workforce development, education, economic development, and then of course, healthcare. The other thing, and I think this should resonate with everyone as you decide, what career path you're going to take, but it's all about policy. And that's what I've come to learn, whether in healthcare that has to do with, what kind of reimbursement. I mean, it's great if we can get our patients connected via telehealth, but if the reimbursement by your health insurance payers are not going to be financially feasible for you to go ahead and enhance and expand on a telehealth infrastructure, then that doesn't put you in a good place to offer that service so widely, because just from a business model, even as a nonprofit, that is something that we need to be cognizant about. Our mission is to keep our doors open so that we can serve anyone regardless of their ability to pay. So where we are and who do we serve? So Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center, we're located, and I love this map because it's just very easy to see. We're on the west side of Oahu. I like this map too because if you see the line that identifies Farrington Highway, you'll notice that it ends. And I think probably, I'm sure most all of you, if on the, on this in the class, know that it doesn't go around the island. And why I like to point that out is, although we are no longer, our area is no longer considered rural in technical terms because we have over 50,000 in terms of population. I consider ourselves rural just because geographically we're one way in, one way out. You can see that the highway, Farrington Highway, is very close to the ocean. One accident, which I think just a few weeks ago, can just really shut down the whole passway, right? One way in, one way out. And so that in itself presents a lot of challenges. But if you look at the number of satellites, and I think what's not showing here is we do have a satellite clinic now in Evo, which is primarily behavioral health. But it also has a telehealth kiosk where we can offer primary care services. The other two not showing there actually are Kapolei. We do have a Kapolei satellite as well as a Waipahu satellite. So we've been able to go out of our initial service area, which is the Waianae Coast, and offer our services in other areas of the leeward side of the island. I think another thing that I like to point out that most people don't know is that we also have health centers in all of our schools. What's not pictured, Kamaili is pictured there. That's actually one of our newest that we're going to be opening up in the beginning of January. And why that's important, I think, from a communication standpoint, when you think about the increase in behavioral health needs and issues for adolescent population and how they're able to connect with those service providers, being able to communicate in a way that it's confidential, right? And that they feel safe and that they can go to someone who's trusted. And so in each of our elementary, intermediate, and high schools, we have a school-based clinic that offers the full gamut actually of services. And very interesting, I hope I have it in this slide, but we use telehealth tools that offer remote physical exams. And so we don't have to have a provider physically in any of those school-based health clinics. We have a medical assistant typically who's there all the time, and they use this tool in order to conduct those telehealth visits with a provider who's then located in one of our clinics. The other thing is we do also have a vision care center, and we also have a specialty clinic. So we're multi-specialty. We've definitely grown. If you look at the top, we made our 50 years a couple of years ago. We started off with one building on the top, on the top of a mountain that I think we had 7 employees, 1 doctor. And we've certainly grown. So the right-hand side is really what our campus looks like. Feel free to come visit us if you haven't already. It's a beautiful campus, I must say, and we have lots of walking trails. The kinds of service patients that we see, the amount of patients that we see, and this is unduplicated, a little over 35,000. So almost, more than half of our community population. We've served 141 in-person visits, and then telehealth last year was over 53,000 visits. And that includes our primary care, so our medical services, as well as behavioral health. And then you can see predominantly we serve a Native Hawaiian population. And so I don't have on here socioeconomic demographics, but one thing that I always like to point out is that in terms of our patient population, over 71% of our patients live at or below the poverty level. So if you keep that in mind and think about the unique challenges, not only from a socioeconomic standpoint, but if you think about, if the majority of our patients are Native Hawaiian, the cultural aspect too, and historically, what has brought in terms of healthcare disparities and other disparities from historically to now. So, what are we going to focus on today? So, our focus areas are going to be telehealth. And so, what that means is and we'll talk about the two different forms. So, synchronous, which is very in person, real time, remote care delivery. Using different technologies, and that can be whether it's a telehealth visit or we're also offering remote patient monitoring now too. We can touch on that a little bit. And then we'll talk about the AI innovations that we're using now and what we can look forward to in the future. And then, of course, we always have to talk about what digital inclusion is and make sure that we all advocate for that, because that touches not only healthcare, but in any really technology is the foundation in any career path that you go to. And really, our purpose is we'll show how technology and communication has really changed in healthcare, and how we want to make sure that it promotes equity, right? So technology can do one of two things. It can either do that, it can, close that wide gap that we know exists between those that have and those that have not, or technology can actually make that gap even wider. And so we always want to be on the side that we make sure that no one is left behind. Okay, so evolution of patient communication in healthcare, and this really kind of is nostalgic for me. So I started in 1990, and that's why I kind of did this timeline here, because this is what I lived through and what I remember. So really the communication, and Bert talked earlier about phone calls. So everybody had landlines. Very few people actually had cell phones. We certainly did not have any kind of mobile phone that we could use in our cars. And all of our scheduling, anything that had to do with a patient visit, whether it was referrals or authorizations, or that was all a paper mess, really is what I'm going to say. And shortly, I'm going to say just in the beginning, 2000 is when our organization, and this is actually really unique for FQHC. So we're a community health center. So back in 2000, we used our money, not with a grant, but we used our money to transition from a paper record into an electronic record. And why that is worth noting is it wasn't cheap. And typically community health centers, I mean, we're always having to worry about funding. So there was a little bit of risk there. But I will say that our current CEO, who was the CEO at that time, he really is truly a visionary and knew that eventually that data, not only of obvious, the obvious, right? Being able to access your information regardless of what clinic you show up at, but the data that was being collected would be able to be mined. And mind you, we didn't have AI yet, but we knew that data could be valuable. It could be used for negotiation powers. It could also be used for really enhanced patient population public health use. And so really his forward thinking, we purchased our EHR in 2000, which then opened up a couple of years after that. It was just a very basic patient portal, but it was secure communication that for patients, and it was very few patients who knew had the connection, who knew how to use it. And these were going to be primarily folks that were already working in a career that involved computers, and they knew how to check email. And I know that sounds crazy, but at the end of 1990, beginning of 2000, a lot of us, including me, I'm going to be honest, we did not know how to check our email in the clinic. We didn't do a whole lot of things on the computer. And so if you can imagine, it was all new to every single person in our organization and our community as well. It was a big shift from your provider communicating with you with a paper chart in front of them to you walking into an exam room, and now you have a computer, the provider is on the computer, pulling information, entering information as they go through the visit. Um, so now in present day, and for us, this really started in 2019 when we started to think about how healthcare was going to change in terms of how people wanted to be seen, right? How the consumer wanted to be seen. Do they have time to come in for an in-person visit? Do they have the ability to access telehealth? And so in 2019, we we're thinking that somewhere between 20 to 30% of our visits in the future, within 5 to 10 years, would probably be, we wanted to offer it so that we'd have maybe about 20, 25% of our visits via telehealth. And that was across the spectrum, whether it's behavioral health, medical, or specialty care. So when we talk about what types of telehealth, synchronous, if you've ever heard that word, it's just real-time videos. You and the provider, like you and I talking now, it's in real time. I'm not going to record it and then send it to you later or send it to a provider later. And then there's asynchronous, and this can be super helpful. We use this in different ways where an exam or a consultation is recorded, saved, and then the link is sent via secure message for e-consults. And that can either be through, for example, a primary care provider who needs a consult with a dermatologist about a patient. And so besides the face-to-face visit that's recorded, there's typically going to be pictures that are uploaded of whatever area needs to be discussed. The other thing that you can think about, you have remote patient monitoring, and that can actually, it can be, in fact, I have a bunch of kits in my office and one just deployed today where it involves a scale, a blood pressure cuff, a tablet, um, and it's all Bluetooth. So as the patient is capturing their vital signs, whether it's blood pressure monitoring, a scale, their pulse ox, to check their oxygen, make sure they're getting enough, and that's good for patients with heart issues, that all that data is being automatically sent over to their care team. So you can think about how this continuous or continuity of care is truly enhanced when you talk about RPM, remote patient monitoring, and how it's now communicated, right? So if anyone knows anyone who has diabetes or has high blood pressure, and back in the day, or even now, your provider asks you to keep a log. What typically would happen is you keep a log, and then when you come in for your checkup, you bring that paper log, and then that paper log is reviewed, and then someone has to upload it. So all of that has changed, with it being automatically digested into an electronic system and then automatically viewable for the care team, almost really in real time if the provider's on. The other thing is our enhanced portals. I talked a little bit about that. So for patient portals, it really isn't now just you and your provider. It's you and your care team. If you have a dietitian, if you have a specialist, if you have a caseworker, you're able to securely message them. And in some applications, so much so that it even feels like you're texting, but it's really within a secure platform. And then the other portals happen with your laboratory services. So I don't know if anyone goes to DLS, they have their own patient portal that you can access so that you can get your results really in real time. And again, sometimes even before your provider. So have times changed, definitely for the better. And then we'll see that there are some challenges for sure with anything that's new, especially when it comes to technology. So and we call this patient engagement, how we engage with our patients, and making sure that it's easy, that it increases efficiency and effectiveness. So we talked about patient portals. There's also mobile apps, and I wish I would have thought to insert this in our slide, but we went ahead and developed our own Community Health Network mobile app. If anyone has Apple, it only works on Apple for now, but it is in general release. If you go to your app store and you type in YNI and my CHC, my community, my Comp Health Connect, you'll see a app come up. It has a PEVA, so it's a green square with a PEVA in the middle, and you should see our YNI comprehensive logo. But you can download that, and what we want to do is use that as a communication platform, not only for our patients, but really for our community. What we found is not only our patients, but our community are looking for a place that they can go to, a one-stop shop that they can find different resources, whether that's healthcare resources, essential services. Say you need help with signing up for insurance or utility assistance, or you want to know when the next wellness workshop is going to happen. And so there's a whole bunch of different uh, uh, options that you can choose from there. So if you have time, go ahead and check that out. And then if you have time, let me or Bert know what you think about it. It just was released. I'm very interested in to getting feedback. We talked about remote monitoring already, different devices, including wearables. I don't have my wearable here, but lots of different wearables. I don't know if people are familiar now. If you have any heart condition, it's as small as a credit card that you keep on you, and you can actually do very simple EKGs. So it does a 1 minute tracking of your heart that automatically gets uploaded to your provider who can see it in real time. And then we'll look at future trends in AI and how that will be personalizing patient care and just really, I think, creating this digital arm. So it's not just about episodic care where you're just seeing your provider every 3 months, but you actually have this continuous line of um, availability and treatment to your care team. So for us during COVID, really telehealth came up, and for everyone, really, it came up as a lifeline for a lot of our patients, right? As if you think about in March 2020 during the shutdown, we were also shut down. So there were very limited in-person access, except obviously for ER or visits where telehealth was not appropriate. So for most of our patients with chronic conditions, behavioral health, it was really, going to be telehealth. And when I use telehealth, I'm going to say it's televideo as well as telephonic, so telephone only. So those are the two modalities. Um, Going back to what I was saying in 2019, for us, we were very lucky, fortunate that we were already thinking about using telehealth as part of our service line. So when 2020 came about with COVID, we already had selected our vendor, our telehealth vendor. We already had our provider licenses, and we were just about ready to prep for a kickoff meeting. So we at least got those big things out of the way, and for me, being the one having to lead that implementation, I'm going to say at the time it was very stressful, but of course, looking back now, it was actually kind of helpful because it forced people to adopt it. A lot of times, if you think about new technology change in itself, it really is hard to get people to adopt it, especially if it's really a different a big change in what they're used to, right? A huge paradigm shift, and that's what really telehealth was. So for me, it was actually if I have to say a blessing, at that time, it made it a lot easier to roll out to everyone. So what we use just real-time video telehealth, very little of the asynchronous, but that is still available. Um, and then we also use messaging tools, and that's through our patient portal, as well as online registration tools. I think if any of you go to your provider's office now, a lot of them will send you ahead of time. It's usually in form of a text or email where they're asking you to do pre-registration. That just helps make your whole visit that much quicker and more efficient. Um, in terms of, behavioral health and how that uh, was truly a lifeline. And I don't, it sounds dramatic, but for some it really was. And it even created a new opportunity for a connection to a provider. And why I say that is we had quite a number of new behavioral health patients that actually made connections for the first time with a psychologist or a uh, uh, psychiatrist. And, if you think about folks who are suffering from behavioral health issues, whether it's anxiety or depression, the thinking that you're actually going to get up in the morning sometimes and get out of bed is hard. Imagine having to get out of bed, get yourself ready, get yourself in a car, transportation to a provider's office to see someone. That's daunting. And for many, that truly was a barrier for them to accessing care. So that's where telehealth, I think, really shined a light on the importance of making sure that this modality of communication is something that not only was so critical and needed during COVID, but now, post-pandemic, it is something that we really need to make sure continues. And that, again, goes back to the policy level to make sure that it's financially feasible and the technology is available for everyone. Now in post-pandemic, what I've really been trying to focus on is making sure that those folks who are not experiencing the same things that our patients, our community faces, we have a lot of chronic conditions, including chronic pain. We have challenges with addiction, substance abuse addiction, and mental health issues. And so for those that haven't experienced that, I'm talking about those at the policy level, when they're sometimes they're so far removed, they're out of touch and don't realize where just having the ability to call someone or have a televideo connection could really mean a matter of, for a person, life or death. And so, highlighting the telehealth waivers, those what our government, federal government did to make it easier for telehealth to be a option for patients, we want to make sure that continues. So what are some of the challenges and solutions when we talk about technology and how it's impacting communication? Well, it's certainly, I'm going to say those, connectivity issues. There's definitely gaps in not only sometimes geographic, where there just really isn't a good cellular connection or maybe fiber, but for a lot of our community, it's affordability. Being able to have affordable, high-speed internet access that is reliable, that can maintain a connection, whether that's a telephone call and especially televideo. And then what we've seen also is you may have that with our Kupuna. A lot of them do have cell phones. A lot of them do have unlimited cellular plans and have Wi-Fi at home, but it's really the confidence and the know-how in order to get connected with your provider. One of the things I like to point out when we talk about Kupuna, right? If you think about your own, grandma and grandpa, our aunties, uncles who are older, the message that we send out to them is don't click the link. You don't want to watch out for scams or some kind of cybersecurity issue. But if you think about if you've ever had a telehealth appointment, how do you get connected with your provider? You receive either a text message with a link or an email with a link. So for our Kupuna, when I have put together some classes around digital literacy, the question was, well, how do I know? How do I know that really is from my doctor so that I can click the link? And then when I do, when it asks me for my birth date, is that secure? Should I put it in? Do I want people to know my birthday? And so really focusing on making sure that the user of that technology, right, the people involved in that method of communication understands and has the proper training and knowledge on how to use it effectively. And so that's the third part of digital inclusion, right? The access, the literacy, and then really the meaningful use. I think we know most folks know how to use social media, but when we talk about meaningful use, and I'm even going to throw Kupuna into this, meaningful use could be, do you know how to access job opportunities? Do you know how to access, for example, all you folks are on Zoom now, which means you obviously have the ability and the know-how to use your technology in a way that's helping you with your academic goals. For Kupuna, a lot of them knew how to get on Facebook because their family members helped to set them up. But for some of them, they didn't know how to run a Zoom. And if you recall, during COVID, all of our neighborhood board meetings, any kind of in our community grassroots committees will come up, and our Kupuna like to be civically engaged in our community. But once that all moved to Zoom, a lot of them were being left out because they didn't know how to get connected. They don't know this Zoom thing. And so that's where meaningful use is. So, what are the solutions to that? Obviously, identifying what the barriers are. And my barriers in my community can be very different from what you folks may experience in your community or in your area of career choices. But once you identify them, then you can look at what is going to best support your community, whether that's education, whether that's going to be equipment. Now, when we talk about technology and we talk about how that's changing the way that we communicate, not only with each other, but how we store information, we certainly have to include, what are some of the challenges, cybersecurity challenges, and then even ethical challenges. I decided to focus on this particular challenge just because I don't know how known it is. I mean, it's brought to my attention because we have a compliance officer who monitors not only cybersecurity risks, and health organizations are probably one of the highest, besides probably the government, that are targeted because of the ability to um, uh, use ransomware against healthcare organizations, right? If you think about all the patient data that we keep, and if that's ever impacted by a cybersecurity attack, what they would do then is keep that information locked down so we couldn't access it, threaten to sell it on, the dark web. And if we don't pay a ransom, then we're not going to get all this patient information. If you think about the over 35,000 patients that we see and the amount of information, including really sensitive information like mental health and substance abuse, how that really poses a risk. And so we have a dedicated cybersecurity security officer who is always looking and monitoring all the new threats that are coming out. But what I wanted to show you here was something that came up a couple of years ago, and I even didn't realize that not something that we use, but a lot of hospitals actually were fined because of this. And a study was done that showed that hospital websites that were set up, and again, this goes back to marketing, being able to track traffic to your website, and then being able to try to get consumers who are visiting that website to choose you as their healthcare provider. And they found that hospital websites were using tracking codes, and these are called metapixels, that were set up in different areas of their website. So as a patient, if you're going on and you're wanting to say schedule a patient, schedule an appointment, that information that you were putting in as you go through that patient self-scheduling process was being tracked or collected by that metal pixel that was inserted into the website and then sent over to, in this case, Facebook. So Meta owns Facebook. And so how that would work, I'll give you an example. And I have a reference at the end of this slide if you want to look up this particular article. But university hospitals in Cleveland, they had it set up in their scheduling online button. Now, there's some discussion on whether or not, how much did the hospitals know in terms of how the technology worked, um, and didn't realize or didn't think about the type of information that was being relayed over to Facebook, and whether or not they really considered it to be PHI, right? So patient health information. So what would happen is a patient, for example, would go on, schedule an appointment, and the different kinds of things that they would search would be doctor's name, the location, right? So you remember you saw on the map are different satellite locations. So it captured the provider they selected, the location they wanted to be seen at, and then reason. If you've ever done a patient self-scheduling, I mean, we have this available as well, but you're going to choose kind of a general reason why you want to be seen. So whether that's for a well woman checkup, or I have a cold, some respiratory, I have a cough or a fever. In this case, and so this comes really from part of the litigation that was happening, the particular patient selected or typed in pregnancy termination. That information, including the patient's name, date of birth, was then sent over to Facebook. Um, similar instances, same thing. Someone selecting Alzheimer's or dementia as the reason why they want to be seen. And so you can imagine for the hospital, they're thinking, I don't know what they were thinking, quite honestly, but being able to use that as a way to see what their patients, were being they could see from a marketing perspective, what reasons their patients were being seen for, maybe what location was most utilized. But what happened was obviously that this sharing of sensitive data without the patient's consent and unknowingly, it being sent over to a third party. And so, really, I think these challenges help to really emphasize or make us remember that as great as technology is, there's always going to be some kind of risk. And I think as general consumers, definitely as patients, it's something that we need to, stay abreast on so that we're akamai about it. And then really question, and it's hard to do that. I'll be first to say that I typically, when you read the terms of agreement in these long pages of how your data is going to be used, what is being collected, I don't read through all of it. I kind of put my trust into the organization. In this case, you trust the hospital to be doing the right thing. So this really is just a good example of how we want to make sure that in our case, our patient's trust and privacy is always protected. And so I posed a question there just for you to think about. We don't have to answer it now. But, I'm always keeping in my head too, how do we balance this technology and just making sure that our patients can still trust in what we're doing and in introducing different technologies to make sure that their care is improved and outcomes are improved. So this is where I talk about digital inclusion. Again, definition, if you think about it, there's really three areas that you focus on when we talk about digital inclusion. That's making sure everyone, regardless of your zip code, regardless of your economic status, that you have access to the internet, that it's high-speed access, so that it's access that's actually usable and can provide opportunity, whether it's employment, whether it's learning, whether it's healthcare. And then the second part is once you have access, making sure that you have a device, and I'm going to say in our community, a lot of it is going to be cell phones. That really is the mini computer in everyone's pocket. Unless you're already in a field where you have access to a laptop and a desktop PC with two monitors that I have here, your life is on a cell phone. And so making sure that you not only have a connected device, but then you also know how to use it, right? Use it in a way, not saying that social media is bad, but also use it in a way that you can have access to the kinds of opportunities that you as an individual want to pursue. And so for us, when we think about the past 4 years and what we have identified in terms of what our community needs are, and this isn't just one icon, this is really our community coming together over three different summits and talking about one of the priority areas in terms of digital equity was really the access, right, and the affordability, and being able to make sure that our community has a way to access that's reliable and that's high speed, and so that we can address everything that we see in digital inclusion. And so one of the things that we've been working on for, 2.5 years now, almost 3, is a community wireless initiative. And so what you see here on the top right for me, I don't know if it's opposite for you, but so the green area, that is our health center. And so we are set up a infrastructure. It's a proprietary infrastructure that offers long-range Wi-Fi that acts like 5G cellular. So regardless of where you're at in terms of as we start to increase this infrastructure, you'll never lose connectivity. So unlike Wi-Fi, if you're in a certain area, once you move out of that area and it goes to a different Wi-Fi, you get logged off and you have to log into that separate Wi-Fi system. This one will act along the coast as one Wi-Fi bubble. So you'll always have connectivity, even if you're in a car. And so what we did, this is already in existence. So the green shows you where our entire campus, our walking trails, our outdoor, and then if you've ever been to our dining pavilion, that's all covered. The yellow that you show, there's connectivity all the way out to the beach that's down the hill from where our health center is at. And of course, that connectivity is in that medium range. So you can still make emergency calls, you can still get connected, probably not do any kind of Netflix streaming, but you could certainly maintain a telehealth video that doesn't take a whole lot of bandwidth. And so what we've done since then, in just the past year, if you look at the middle picture, what that's showing you is we set up a Wi-Fi antenna. So HMOM stands for Halemekana o Maili, and that's an affordable housing complex. So when we talk about the patient population and community population, we did an analysis of that affordable housing complex, and over 3/4 of those residents are actually our patients. And we were able, based on the data that we collect, we're able to see that there were a handful of patients, not many, but for me, it only takes one, that don't have internet access at all. And that was the reason why they connected with their provider via telephonic. We keep by telephone only. And then we had others that had to connect via telephone because their access wasn't reliable. And so what we've done there, if you, we've set up a site-to-site antenna, access antenna on top of that building. And then the bottom one is, and so this is a whole model of what we're gonna roll out to our whole coast. So if anyone's familiar with, if you think back to the map from Nanakuli to the beginning of Makaha, a whole Wi-Fi bubble so that our community will, we can start to really address the access issue. So that's a community member home where an access point has been installed on their home. It's very low radio frequency, same wireless technology that you might have in your home already. And then it just works off their regular electric plug. Um, and so again, why does this matter? I mean, if we honestly, if we don't focus on making sure that those who want to get connected to the internet have that option, have this option to pursue whatever goal it is to make their life better, make their family life better, make their economic situation better, make their healthcare better, that that gap will only get larger, right? If we think about how quickly, right, technology is moving, we want to make sure that everyone is empowered and that we don't have a whole community left behind. And so what have we been doing? So I'd always like to highlight this. Earlier this year, we were recognized with a Tequity in Action Award from the American Medical Association and Health Foundation for the work we did in bringing together, really focusing on digital inclusion, right? We looked at the access. How did we address access? How did we address literacy? In this case, I decided to focus on our kapuna at that time, who I knew they were fearful. They were fearful of going out because, you know, they might get sick, but then they were fearful of getting connected via telehealth to make sure that they stayed connected with their healthcare provider. And so we wanted to make sure that they had all the tools that they need to not give up, right, for however long at that time. I mean, this is 2022. We didn't know how much longer COVID was gonna, you know, keep us indoors or, you know, have these barriers of in-person care. So we wanted to make sure that they were able to connect. And I will preface it by saying that it wasn't only our patients. This is actually a community literacy program because my focus was really on Kapuna. It didn't matter if they were our patients or not. I wanted to make sure that they could have that access to the healthcare that they were, you know, putting off to the side. And so if you think back in 2000, that was our first March 2020, sorry, 2020 was the first time we started to use telehealth. We were able to ramp up very quickly, 2,600 visits in 1 month, and it only expanded from there. Our community Wi-Fi initiative, so the green that you just saw in the previous slide, that's what gave us the connectivity for our kapuna. And then they all walked away. If you see here, this was our oldest kapuna, 91, I think, at the time. And if you can notice on his screen, I have 25 kapuna in one room, all connected to Zoom. This is one of our classes. They all finally learned how to get on Zoom. And it was just life-changing for quite a few of them. Not only were they more confident in being able to connect to their telehealth providers, but a lot of them were then able to participate in their neighborhood board meetings. I was just thinking at the time too, so I'm going to make sure that I get through this. So now what does the future of communication hold? Well, actually, we're already doing this. So I don't know if anyone has gone to a doctor's office yet and your doctor says, okay, hold on, are you okay if I record our visit because it's going to help me with your documentation and I can spend more time looking at you. This particular technology we use is called DAX, and that's probably one of the most popular. Nuance DAX is now owned by Microsoft. DAX stands for Dragon Ambient Experience. And what it does is, I'm going to see if I can play this real quick. And let me know if you can hear this, Bert. Hopefully this will come on because I think this is very, and it's very short, but it explains it very well.
Let's walk through how DAX Copilot works. Yeah. I'm about to go into the exam room to do an annual physical. After explaining DAX Copilot to my patient and gaining consent based on my organization's policy, I'll set my device down so DAX Copilot's ambient technology can capture our conversation.
Sounds like you've been feeling a bit under the weather. What's been going on?
Yeah, I've been having a rough time this last week. It started out just as cold symptoms.
While I'm in the exam room, I'm 100% focused on the patient, speaking naturally as we go through the visit. DAX Copilot listens, creates a clinical summary, and frees me up to spend time with my patient. DAX Copilot uses conversational, ambient, and generative AI technology to automatically create a clinical summary. So immediately after I'm done with the patient, I can look at the summary, and I have the option to do some editing right in the DAX Copilot app. I can either move on to my next appointment or go to Dragon Medical One on my workstation to add details for this patient encounter. Let's go to Dragon Medical One. When I open the Dragon Bar menu, there's an indicator to tell me I've got a DAX Copilot note to review. I can open DAX Copilot from the menu or say a command. Open DAX Copilot. My clinical summaries are listed on a work list in the DAX Copilot window. Once I choose a summary to work on, I can review and manually edit the note, dictate with Dragon Medical One, or even use commands to get it finalized. While the Summary tab shows the content generated by DAX Copilot, the Transcript tab is a transcript of my conversation with the patient. I can use this to make sure I've documented the full patient story. And now I'm ready to move my document to the EHR to complete this patient's encounter. I can select sections to transfer or copy the entire document. I'll place my cursor where I want the text to go in the EHR and say Transfer Selected to paste the selected sections from DAX Copilot. Any final changes can be made with Dragon Medical One right in the EHR before signing the document. That's it. Now I'm ready for my next patient. Thanks.
So very cool. That's something that we're already using now in our clinics, and so I hope to roll that out. And it's actually been very well received by our patients. And I think that really came up because of the trust that they have in their provider. So it's definitely something that is provider driven, but it's very cool. What you see here is that they used to have a quality review person that was involved in this AI learning loop, but DAX, and if you think about this, it's being used worldwide. And so the way that when the information is recorded, it's all de-identified. The patient information is de-identified. It goes into this huge data bank. And so when you think about different languages, you think about accents, that's how the AI can continue to learn and work and evolve for every single provider, regardless of your specialty, regardless of your language, regardless of your if you have any accents. And so it really does produce a really, when we call a SOAP note, it'll take all that conversation, it'll weed out anything that has nothing to do with the patient's pertinent history or reason for the visit. So, if you and your provider are just talking story like, hey, I heard your daughter got married last month, how was it? None of that is in the summary. It's in the transcript because that's what you folks talked about. That's the actual recording. But the AI has learned to be able to distinguish based on context, right, of what information should be placed into that record. So I don't know if you can tell, but I'm super excited about it. So I think it's very cool that we're using it. We actually got started even before Queens did. The next thing that I have, and I'm going to try to play this as well, but I had a great opportunity and looking at, I was applying for a grant and I come across a technology that used holographic. images to be able to have a telehealth visit that really was even more enhanced, obviously, than what you and I are doing on a screens, but to have a projected holograms, think Star Trek, if anybody's into Star Trek, but having that kind of interaction with your patient. So just as luck would have it, the company HoloConnects is their main hub is in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And I happened to be going that way for a vacation this past summer. And so I called. And so to go visit to see it in person. So what you're seeing in these pictures, I was actually there. I got to visit and they got to show me how it was set up. The man in here, his name is Milton. He's the CEO for Molokai Community Health Center. And he was on vacation as well. So we got to see how this works. So this one, him in the box is his hologram. So he's standing behind this screen where he's coming out from here. And so his image is being projected in the box. And then if you see here, that's me in the little box. So they have a regular life size, but they also have a desktop hologram box. So you can imagine bringing in your provider, right? So you can see that's me being projected. And I didn't know what else to do, but I was excited, as you can tell. But right, isn't that so cool? So imagine, so our CMO, his name is Dr. Bradley. Oh my gosh, Dr. Bradley, can you imagine having a little Dr. Bradley in your living room, right, being projected? And this projection, so you standing behind the camera would be, in your office. So I'm going to try to play this. This is another short one, but it really does give you, and it is being used in the US by a Texas hospital. And so let me.
It seriously apart.
Hi, Mr. Modi. Good afternoon. How are you today?
I feel good, actually, in fact.
You're looking at Dr. Saad Hussein.
Okay, nice.
Just not in the flesh.
I looked at your EKG, your electrocardiogram. That looks good.
He has teleported to this hospital in Lancaster from several cities over.
Malfunction was good, so.
To meet with a patient via hologram.
Do you have any questions?
In 3D, real time, and life size.
It's a great technology.
Crescent's CEO Raji Kumar says her hospital is the first in the nation to ever do it.
I'm super excited of being able to bring some of this technology to North Texas.
It is clearly cool.
Yeah.
But what's the point? Well, here's an example. The hospital has a clinic 45 minutes away in Farmers Branch. Instead of driving back to the hospital for a simple pre-op, post-op, or follow-up appointment.
Our doctors on the north side of town don't have to drive 30 miles to see one of their patients. They can just hop into the studio and they can have a consult.
Dr. Hussein and Crescent's other providers can now simply step into the clinic's studio.
You just turn it on and then they let you know that the patient is already there.
Where a monitor, mic, and camera.
And you can do the examination and stuff on the video call.
Teleport them to the hospital.
And this is what we are using it for now.
Kumar plans to put more studios in doctors' offices and homes.
It's like kind of you're face to face.
And more holoboxes in her hospital.
I was looking at your chart.
So doctors can teleport directly into patient and emergency rooms.
When I see the patient live there in the emergency room, that will give me more sense that what is going on over there.
In an interview via the holobox, Dr. Hussein told me a hologram is as close to in-person as it gets.
The patient is seeing you and it looks more like closer to reality then definitely patients feel more comfortable,
It is all very new, of course.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
There are lots of questions.
Definitely in future, there'll be more things coming day by day. So
for now, we know there is a hospital here at home testing new technology.
Okay, good to see you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
That could change the future of medicine.
All right. So again, I don't know if you can tell how excited I am about technology. But again, it's something that it's just because it's bright and shiny and great. I'm always cognizant of, how is it going to fit in for our community from a cultural perspective, and then also from a needs perspective. But I think it's really, cutting edge, something that I think that we are definitely going to start to see more and more as we move forward. And not only in the healthcare industry, quite honestly, if you have a chance, look up HoloConnects. It's being widely used around the world, honestly, for marketing. If you think about from a business perspective, for hotels, it makes sense. Think about when you check into a hotel, right? There may be times of the day at the hotel where you don't need, it can be very slow. So you don't necessarily need to have someone standing behind the counter, right, waiting for someone to come up. So some of the bigger hotels have actually put in these hollow boxes. And so they have one receptionist, one desk person, hotel desk person sitting in a central location. And as you, the consumer, go up to the desk, you tap on something or have some kind of indicator that you want to talk to a person. Well, this hollow box then is then streamed, this person is then streamed to you via the Hollow Connects. So think about how applicable it is not only in in healthcare, but also in other industries. I think we are now getting to our last slide, which are, any closing thoughts. So I think really just in summary, we think about how transformative technology has been in terms of how we communicate in healthcare with our patients, between specialists, providers, how patients are able to better communicate. But we also want to make sure that as we move forward, that just because the innovation is something that we want to roll out as an organization, we want to make sure that everyone is able to participate and receive and realize the benefits from it. And so really, I mean, I'm always going to say, if you've ever gone to any of my presentations, technology is great, but really all of us should be cognizant and make this our priority or call to action to really remind and advocate for everyone to make sure that everyone has the ability to connect if they want to and have the same kinds of avenues to different opportunities that probably a lot of us do since we're all on a Zoom and in school. So at this point, I don't know, Bert, if there's time for any questions or reflections. I'm totally happy to answer any.
Sounds good. Questions, anybody for Chrissy? I know there was quite a bit of material, and Chrissy, I do appreciate kind of the overview of all the cool things that are happening in the medical field. So yeah, it is definitely a environment where the technology is quickly moving, and then the balance between the access and the basically equitable access. How do you not get too wrapped up in just the technology for technology's sake, and are you able to evaluate it in such a fashion that it's bringing additional value? Yeah, so I think that's exciting times.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for Chrissy?
And I did share, Bert, I don't know if you got a chance to send a PDF copy of the presentation to your students, but I did share with Bert. And so, hopefully that's something that you folks will have. And my contact information too is there in the slide deck as well. Feel free to call me, email me, if something comes up now or later down the road, if you're looking for, internship, opportunities, out here in Waianae Comprehensive, we have a plethora of different programs, that we love to, whoever wants to come out and learn more about the community and as well as help you in your journey, that's always open. I mean, things that I didn't even get a chance to talk about is we have a telehealth kiosk in our grocery store. That's very cool. So talk about one-stop shop. We've designated as a clinic. We can bring our patients via transportation, see their provider, whether it's a dietitian, behavioral health, primary care. Right outside of that is our pharmacy. We have a community pharmacy in our grocery store. Then they go shopping for their groceries, and then we bring them home. So yeah, lots of different things that we're doing. And then also to the reference, if anyone's interested in that story on the Metapixel.
So Chrissy, I did share the presentation. It's in La Lima under resources.
Awesome.
So if anybody want to check that out and kind of review some of the links, I think there's also a page on I think there's very last page is not only a mahalo but a reference guide to some of these topics that were covered. So anyway, Chrissy, thanks for sharing that. That was great, and for all the students, you have the survey to do, and then next week we'll have a lecture on Tuesday, and then we'll have a final guest lecture on that following Thursday. So we'll see you all next week. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, mahalo
everybody.
again. Aloha.
Thanks, Chrissy. Aloha.
Thank you.